My friends, the Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. The sisters of Lazarus sent word to Jesus, saying, "Master, the one you love is ill." When Jesus heard this, he said, "This illness is not to end in death, but is for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it." Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that he was ill, he remained for 2 days in the place where he was. Then after this he said to his disciples, "Let us go back to Judea." When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, but Mary sat at home. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise." Martha said, "I know he will rise in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus told her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, even if he dies, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord. I have come to believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, the one who is coming into the world." He became perturbed and deeply troubled and said, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Sir, come and see." And Jesus wept. So the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not the one who opened the eyes of the blind man have done something so that this man would not have died?" So Jesus, perturbed again, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone lay across it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the dead man's sister, said to him, "Lord, by now there will be a stench. He has been dead for 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. And Jesus raised his eyes and said, "Father, I thank you for hearing me. I know that you always hear me, but because of the crowd here I have said this, that they may believe that you sent me." And when he had said this, he cried out in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, tied hand and foot with burial bands, and his face was wrapped in a cloth. So Jesus said to them, "Untie him and let him go." Now many of the Jews who had come to Mary and seen what he had done began to believe in him. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Coming together on the 5th Sunday of Lent, it is not liturgically the last Sunday of Lent, but practically, I think, is the last Sunday of Lent, because next Sunday, of course, we begin Holy Week and the celebration of Palm Sunday and Palm Sunday of the Lord's Passion. So in a sense, this is the last Sunday of Lent, and it concludes with the final of the 3 great stories from the Gospel of John that we hear in the Lenten season. And this, of course, the great story of the raising of Lazarus from the dead. It is a complicated story. It's personal and intimate and loving and faithful and interesting, and there's so much to it. I suggest we just sort of focus on Jesus himself. We have Martha and Mary again, and the whole struggle of the Christian life of balancing action and contemplation, faith and works. We have Lazarus, the one that he loved, who, like us, is dead in a certain way. We experience our own spiritual deaths. But really, always, of course, the center is Jesus. And in this story, John reveals to us what we believe about him. that he was truly and fully man, and he is truly and fully divine. And it seems to me that this story just captures that so completely. One of the commentators suggests that the basic point and lesson of this whole event, this whole story, is that death is not a physical reality, but a spiritual reality. I think I know what the commentator's saying, but that's not true completely. That's not true completely. You remember back in November we had the funeral of Lieutenant Jason Menard, the hero of the Worcester Fire Department. Packed church, tragic, terribly sad situation. Well, the day before that, or 2 days before that, we also had a funeral here of a faithful parishioner, an 83-year-old man who was also a Steeler fan. So it was tragic in that way, too, of course. But at that small little funeral, at the time of the offertory, his wife stepped out. I'm going to cry like I did then. His wife stepped out of the pew to let some of the kids come to get the gifts for the offertory procession. And when she came out, she just rubbed the coffin. They had been together since they were 16 years old. And it occurred to me, every death is sad. Every death is a loss. And death is a physical reality as well. So the story isn't that death is the physical death is not that. It's hard. It's painful. But that from that comes a whole new way of life. And that as long as we do not allow our spirit to die, then we can experience the whole new way, that the new bones that Ezekiel promised. And that's really what Jesus shows us. He comes to the tomb, this person that he loved, and all of these people who he loves, crying and in grief. And John tells us the shortest sentence in the New Testament, Jesus wept. He recognizes in that human way the real hurt of losing someone that we love. And yet, he goes to the tomb, and at the tomb he says simply, Lazarus, come out. And his divine power transforms that physical death into a spiritual rebirth. That is the same sort of experience we have now. This pandemic is real. Physical death is real. The distancing and the pain and the anxiety that we experience is real. But as long as we, like Martha and Mary, remain open to the power of Jesus and his resurrection, then it will not cause spiritual death or spiritual distancing, but rather will, as Jesus promised his disciples before he left for Bethany, it will serve to bring glory to God. That, as Jesus said to Martha and Mary, as long as we believe, we will come to experience, even in this terrible, terrible situation, the glory of God.